Hi and welcome to PolyOriginals with Fiona Abel-Smith. Today I thought we'd make a sweet little cane, something along these lines here, although I'm going to do it in different colours for today. And I call this one the square dance cane because you've got a nice square in the middle, and these fluting out of little bits here to me just look like the skirts of dresses if there's people standing in a square doing a dance and their dresses all swell out. So I've just called this one the square dance cane. And we're going to put it together to make a pendant. And these are the colours we're actually going to do today. And as well as the pendant, you can also use it to make a nice pair of earrings. So we'll go through how to do those as well. So that's it. So a nice pendant. Obviously you can use this cane for loads of other different things as well. It doesn't have to be a pendant and earrings. And I'll start by taking you through the equipment you need to do this project today. So the tools we're going to use today are fairly standard, so nothing too exceptional that you need for this. Some form of tissue blade or blade we use of polymer clay. I'm going to use a knitting needle. This is a 4mm one. It's just blunt ended. I just use that for rolling over any joins in seams. Craft knife always comes in handy. We're going to use some cutters, and I've got a round cutter that's about 2 inches in diameter, so it's about 5 centimetres, and a little one there for doing the earrings that's about 1 inch in diameter, about 2.5 centimetres. And because these are double-sided, I use a bit of hardboard just to press down on them, just so I don't hurt my hands. And when we're pressing down, we're just going to use a bit of cling film or plastic wrap just to give ourselves a nice beveled edge. Some form of a roller, and that's to create a groove as well as to roll over the clay. To create the domed effect, this is the Sculpey domed set, which gives you a really nice finish. If you don't have that, then the bottom of an old tin can, once it's been used, a drinks can, just chop off the bottom of that. That gives you a nice domed effect, but you might want to sand off if it's got a sell by date or any writing on the bottom, because otherwise that goes onto your piece, but that works well. And also just some form of a spoon quite often works well, just to give you a nice domed effect. Or of course, the top of a light bulb. Quite a few people use an old spent light bulb. So anything that just gives you a nice domed effect, but I'm going to be using this one today. And then, as always, measuring sheet. This one is from www.printablepaper.net. And I use this quite a lot, as I say, because it just gives me nice big inches to work in, and I've just laminated it, so that means I can work on it. A tile to work on. This is just the work surface I'm using today. A pasta machine to get our polymer clay nice and thin, and just some wet wipes and tissues just to clean and wipe your hands and equipment as we go along. So those are the main things. And then to make it up into a finished piece, once our piece is finished, I'll be sanding and buffing it. So I'm going to use wet dry sandpaper, and I'll use 240, 600, 1000, 1500, and then the 2000, just to get up to a nice smooth finish. And if you're doing that, then you might want to have a pair of rubber gloves as well, just to protect your hands, but I'll mention that as we go through later on. And then to create the loop in the back of the pendant, you could use a bail. We could set that in. You could use a jump ring. I've got a couple of sizes there. You could use a little screw if you've got any of those. You can make yourself a round just from a piece, a head pin, just a piece of metal you've got. Any of those will work. And then to make the earrings, I'm just going to use these stud posts. So they've got the flat tops to them, and we'll just inset that. And they have the scroll backs. And then just some form of chain. So you could use one of these sort of pre-bought ones. There's a little metal chain there. There's a cord chain there. Either of those will work. And you can, if you haven't got any of those. For one of mine, I'm just going to plait some colours of tapestry thread together and use that as a cord. So whatever you've got to hand, there's no right or wrong in that, just what you've got. You'll also need a little bit of liquid clay. I've just decanted some into a little bottle here. Some foil to tent your pieces in inside the oven, and if you are planning on making your own little bail out of a piece of wire, something like this, then some pliers will come in handy as well. So I think that's it. So now I'll take you through the clays you're going to need. The clay I'm using today is Fimo Soft, but all brands of polymer clay work well for this technique. And the colours I'm going to use today, I'm using plum, apple green, white, black, purple, and royal violet. And these amounts here are just 7 grams, and this one is 14 grams, or that's 1/4 ounce, and this one's 1/2 ounce. And I've cut this into two because I'm going to do a skinner blend with those 3 colours, and this bit I'm going to keep separate. So I'd recommend when you're conditioning your clay to do the same. So condition all the colours separately and get them nice and well conditioned. If you've got any problems with how to condition clay or don't know what that involves, I do have a video for that, which I'll put a link to in the details below. So I'll bring you back when all my clay is conditioned. So here's all my clay. I've put it all through on setting number 3, which is a medium setting of my pasta machine. And on my machine, 0 is thick and 9 is thin. So a medium type setting is what you need. Most of these colours I'm not going to use, so I'll put those to one side for now, because I'm going to start by doing a skinner blend with these 3 colours. So I want to go from the purple through to the white and then through to the green. And again, anyone who has any or hasn't come across a skinner blend before or doesn't really know what to do with a skinner blend, I do have a separate video showing you how to do a skinner blend. So I'm just going to take you pretty quickly through this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut diagonally down through those 2 pieces and down the middle of those 2 pieces. I'm then going to lift that piece up here and put it round there, that piece up there, put it round there, and put those 2 pieces together. And the reason I've got white, there's 2 reasons why I've got the white in the middle here. These go together like this. The first one is that where the purple or the plum and this apple green meet, because I've got yellow and blue in the green and I've got blue and red making this plum colour, if you've ever got any colours that mix where you essentially you've got yellow, red and blue together, you'll end up with a sort of browny colour. So I've put the white in between and I'm going to move these off just a fraction here so that when they meet there is a bit of white in the middle. I'm not worried about this being really uneven because, as you know, if you've done skinner blends before, that all comes out in the wash, but I am making sure when I put them together that I haven't got much of an overlap, so that when I pull these up and double them up, put it in half, you will see there's not really an overlap. The other reason why I'm putting the white inside is because it will just lighten this plum colour a bit here and lighten the apple, so when you get the blend it just makes a nicer, smoother blend. So I've now got 4 layers of clay here, so I'm going to put it back through the pasta machine, fold first, but I'm going to put it through on 1 setting thicker, so that's setting number 2 on my pasta machine. And I'll keep putting it through, each time I put it through, fold bottom to top until I get a smooth blend. And because of this mix, in this particular blend, I'm going to be quite careful when I'm folding it up and make sure I keep that white nicely in the middle. So I'll just do it a couple of times for you. So you can see there, not getting it too close to the colours, and then I'll carry on doing that until I've got the blend completely done and bring you back when it's done. So there we go, we've got our nice blend of purple down into green, and although there's been a slight overlap because of that layer of white, it's really only gone, so it's quite a nice sort of tinge of sort of brownness in between the 2. Now we're going to make a cane as normal, so I'm going to cut this in half because I only want to work in a narrow height whenever I'm making a cane. So just cut straight down the middle, lay one piece on top of the other, and I'm going to put this back through the pasta machine, purple end first, whichever is your darker end, back through lengthways, so we'll end up with a nice long piece, and it'll still be on setting number 2 at the moment. And now it's on setting number 2, I'm going to make it much longer and thinner. Now I know if you watched my videos before, I'm saying the same as I've say each time. If you know your pasta machine is good, then put it straight down onto the thinnest usable setting and put that through, purple end first, all the way through. If, however, you think your pasta machine, or you know your pasta machine shreds the clay, if you try and do that, then work down 1 level at a time until you get to your lowest usable level. So there we go, our nice long strip, and all we're going to do is we're going to concertina this backwards and forwards. Doesn't matter which end you start from, but I'm doing it about a thickness, if you can see there, so it's probably about just over 1/2 inch, about 1.5 centimetres in thickness, folding it backwards and forwards, trying to make sure you don't get any trapped air in the folds. Now I'm going to be relatively neat today. There's some parts of this cane which you need to be a bit neat for and some parts which you don't, but if possible you want to get it fairly uniform. So I'm going to be, as I say, relatively neat. We are going to make this into a circle in a moment, but I will just fold it, keep it nice and square today. There we go. So there is our cane. So now what I'm going to do is just going to press it flat to make sure both the tops are flat, and I'm just going to round off the sides ever so slightly. And then give it a roll. And if it's got too tall, press it back down, because really I only want it to be about 1.5 inches in length that way. So there's our cane. We're now going to take a bit of our black, chop off a bit just wider, and I'm going to put that through the pasta machine in that direction on quite a thin setting, because I just want a thin wrap to go around this, just something that's going to separate the bits of the cane when we put it together in a big square. So setting number 7 on my machine, so that way on, and then I know it's going to wrap around. There we go. Put it up next to your cane. Use your blade as a measuring tool to measure one end neat, and then top and bottom just slightly bigger is fine. And then just wrap that one round in one layer. If you sort of run your finger down, you can then generally see where it overlaps. So either with a craft knife or with your blade, just cut off the excess. And then you're going to look and see what you've got. I'll just give it a bit of a roll, just to press that black clay nicely. Now I'm going to put my inserts into the green end, so I'm going to set it with the purpley end on my tile and just press it down slightly. Take your roller, this one's probably just over 1 centimetre in diameter, and I'm going to use that and press down and create a groove. Now I'm going to press quite hard. Now I'm not rolling it, so it's only really the right size for my roller, but can you see there I've pressed down quite hard to create a groove. Take your white clay, and I'm going to fold that piece in half because I'm going to put it through on a thicker setting. So I want this to go through on setting number 2, which is relatively thick on my machine. So I'll put that through and come back when that's done. And all you're looking for is a piece that's as wide as your pieces here that you've already got. So again, use your blade as a guide. I'm going to chop off one end neatly, and you're looking for something just wider than your roller. And now that piece can sit just inside. Start it with your fingers, and then with your roller, just use it to push that neatly down inside. So that's just going to sit inside the groove. We're then going to take a bit of our pink, or purple as it's called in the Fimo Soft, but I don't know how it comes across on the video, but this is actually quite a pink colour, whereas for me what they call plum is actually quite purple. So I'm just going to roll a piece. I haven't taken all of it, I've probably taken just over half. And you do want this to be roughly the right size all the way along, so if you ever have any problems rolling things, just get a tile or a bit of hardboard and you can just roll, and that will give you a nice even piece that you roll. He just pops in the middle there. Then we will take our knitting needle, and same as before, I'm just rocking it backwards and forwards to create a groove. You see that? And then we'll take a little bit of our royal violet, probably about half of that, and again just rolling this up, and we're going to make an even smaller roll that'll sit in the middle of that one. In fact, don't even need that much. So a nice little roll. And he should just sit in the top. Make him slightly smaller. Just gives a bit of an accent. I was going to nip off the ends of the clay there with my fingernails. So that is our cane basically built. So what we need to do now is change the shape of it. So lying it flat with its bottom on the tile or your working surface, just pinch the black up towards the middle. Nice and evenly if you can, along both sides. Now if you leave a bit along the top, that's absolutely perfect, because that gives us an idea of where the cane goes in the next stage, so that's fine. Again, if you close it all over the top, that's fine, don't worry about it. There are ways around everything that happens with this cane. You'll notice that the sides will have become longer, so just with your fingers, press them in at the top where it's become distorted, and then you can press downwards on the sides as well. I'm just going to close it slightly more at the top. Don't worry if the black or the surrounding colour clay breaks open like mine has here. It's a very thin layer we've got on here, and we're going to end up with more than one layer next to each other, so you don't need to worry about that at all. But what you end up with is a triangular cane. So we're now just going to reduce this down, and we want to make this till it's about 4.5 inches or 12 centimetres in length. So So something that's nicely and easily divisible by 3. And all I'm doing is with one hand, at the bottom of the cane, as I turn it, I'm just pressing in and moving from one end to the other. If your ends start to pull out, just with your other finger, just push it neatly back in. And don't forget every so often just to rotate the cane, turn it the other way up, because you have a tendency to move with your fingers at different sort of strengths. So you'll start off quite strong and then perhaps get less as it gets towards the end. And you'll start to find that the cane becomes easier to work the more you work with it. So once it starts to move, you can start using both hands, going backwards and forwards. And we are looking to keep this as even as possible. And this is where the measuring sheet's going to come in a minute, because this is one particular cane where, to get the nice square dance look, which I sort of showed you at the beginning, we do want this nice and even. You can, when it's got to a certain size, just run your fingers gently along just to straighten out all the lumps and bumps you put in with your fingers. And then we will get our measuring sheet and we'll see how we're doing. So I want this about 4.5 inches, excluding any wastage. Now the wastage is the bit where the colours become pushed down the cane and become distorted, because you want to make sure it's nice and even the whole way down. So I just need to pull it slightly. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use one of these long darker lines closest to me, and I'm going to put the bottom edge up towards it, and I'm going to see how we're doing. So I want to pinch in just fractionally. So I'm just under 1 inch in width on that one. That one needs to be a bit wider there. So you can use the measuring sheet. If it's a bit narrow, because here I've gone a bit narrow, you can actually push the cane to make it wider. And if it's too wide in certain places, you can press it in. And just do that to make sure that all 3 sides are nice and even. That's not too bad. And then you can just neaten off the ends. And I say I'm going to 4.5 inches, so I'll neaten that off there. And then take 3 even pieces. So if you're doing it in centimetres, it would be 3 lots of 4 centimetres. And there we have our cane. So that's the first time you get to see what the cane looks like. But you know me, so we're going to change the shape of this. So we've got triangles at the moment, but we're going to change those. So again, get your rolling pin, and the bit that's away from the added detail that you've put in, put that up next to your roller and gently press around the top to curl it around your roller. Now I will do it one end and then turn around and do the other. I just find it does it neater doing it that way around. Once you've got the whole bit done with your groove, you're going to start pressing in right in the middle just to join those 2 bits together. Start in the middle, work out towards that end, then work out towards that end, because that way you won't get any air trapped. You will notice though how it expands. That's fine. So just press it down top and bottom on your work surface or the measuring sheet, and then just press back in to neaten up so we've got that sort of long diamond type shape. And do that for the other 2 slices as well. So those are our 3 pieces. You want to put them together, the first 2 pieces together, so that your single colour, not the bit with the added bits, joins into a point. And then where this extra bit is, this piece fits in the middle. So you end up with a nice row of those colours down the middle. Check it first at the top, and then at the bottom. And what you end up with is sort of like a teardrop or a pear drop shape. But again, you know me, so we don't want to keep it that shape, we're going to change it. So we've got 2 points at the moment. Now if you, with your thumb and finger, press those points in to each other, you will automatically end up with more of a square shape. So do the top first, turn it over, so your 2 points press in towards each other. And once you've got both top and bottom done, then you can press in down the sides, and automatically you end up with more of a square shape. And if you've left that little bit of a line showing through, you should see that on 2 of your sides. So it's there and it's there. You should also have a crease right along one corner as well. And if you've got that, then you know you've done your square cane correctly. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to reduce this one in exactly the same way as we did before. I'm just working my way along with one hand only to start with. It's also helpful as well sometimes when you've changed the shape to get your roller, particularly when you're working a square cane, and just roll along the tops and bottoms. Now those of you who've got any of the equipment, like the square benders and all that sort of stuff from the various places you get them online, then obviously feel free to use those. If you haven't, then this is the way I would reduce your cane. So I'm just working gently and gradually along, as we did before, one hand only, remembering to turn over every so often and trying to keep it a nice square shape. We will go back to using our measuring sheet momentarily, and I want to get this till it's about 4 inches or 10 centimetres in length. If you want to every so often, give it a bit of a pull, and once it starts moving quite freely, then you can start working with both hands. And with the measurements and the amount of clay we're using, you should find that this will go to about 1/2 inch in width when it gets to about 4 inches. So let's see how we're doing. So we're getting close to 4 inches, and again, not including the wastage on either end. And again, I will just check to make sure it's fairly even on each side. Okay, it's not too bad. So I'll chop off the wastage and put it so it's evenly on the measuring sheet. So I'm actually just slightly over 4 inches, but I know if I chop down the middle, and you're going to put it together, but you're going to put it together that way. Now, can you see with that black line there, it's creating a little oblong in the middle. And then having done that, pull up the other end. You should get your registration, this line left down the middle from that bit where you pulled it over, so you can use that to join the 2 bits up. Now normally I'm not sort of too bothered about which way you put it together, but there is a reason for this, and I will show you that reason in just a minute. You then chop down the middle of those 2, pick them up, put them together, and that is your cane. So turn it over, make sure they marry up on the bottom as well. And having done that, you will see in the middle there, we've got a little square. And as I said earlier, these bits just reminded me of skirts swirling out as if there's a whole load of people in there doing a square dance, which is why I've called it the square dance cane. Now, if we'd have joined it around the other way, we would have ended up with a look like this. So can you see here, what makes up these little box here is actually on the outside. Now this also gives a nice look, but if I only want to use 4 squares, which is what I want to do in today's project, so I'm just going to take 4 slices of this and then create a nice circular pendant. This gives a different look, and I will show you now. So I know I showed you some of the different colours, but doing what we've done, giving the squares, gives us that look. If you do this way, then you end up with a square in the middle. So it's totally up to you which way you do it. But say those are the 2 looks it will give you. And if we're only using 4 squares, then you need to decide and make sure which way around you do it. So say I'm doing it this way for now. So having got my 4 squares there, I'm just going to press them in to make sure they're nicely adhered, all those 4 bits of cane. And it's not quite square. So first thing I will do is give it a bit of a roll. And then I will measure again. I want to try and get this as square as possible. So you can use your actual measuring sheet by putting it down on the square like that and seeing how it fits down. you can do it on its side like this, trying to make sure it's all the same the whole way down. Doesn't matter how you do it, but so you hopefully end up with something that is as square as you can get it. So we now want to take some of the rest of our black clay, put that through on a medium thinnish setting. So I'll put it through on setting number 5 on my pasta machine. I'm going to use this as an underbelay base to put our slices of veneer on top. And that should give you more than enough to cover or to take 4 slices of your cane. And then start slicing your cane. And as with most of the things I do when I do cane slices, it doesn't matter the thickness you do. What's important is that they're consistent. So do a thickness that is comfortable for you to do. So I'm just going to take off a small bit to start with, just to neaten up the end. And then I'm going to take 4, hopefully even slices. So when you pick these up, if you pull the first one down and pick that one up that way, you just know automatically that they are going to join. And we'll put those 2 like that. And if you do the same again, turn them up and pull them up, you know that they are going to join. And generally, you turn that one upside down. And then when you put them together, they should marry up perfectly. This is another reason why I like to use an underneath layer of clay, because you can hold your 2 slices, first 2 slices on nice and neatly, and then the other 2 should just pop down. And then I'm going to take my tissue blade, chop off the excess, and then just with the blunt end of a knitting needle, I'm just going to roll over any joins very gently, just to make sure there's no gaps. I find doing it with something small like this at this stage just gives me more precise control over moving the clay in certain directions. And then when you're happy, take your rolling pin and roll both directions and diagonally as well. Now the other thing is we do want this to be as square as possible, because we're going to take a circular cutter to it. Now that's actually more oblong than square, so don't be scared to actually pick your piece up and just pull it out. So pull it until it's square. You can use a measuring sheet again to check how square it is. So obviously it still needs to go in this way. But get used to pulling and pushing your clay, because you're going to manipulate it in so many ways. And if you get it as square as you can before you cut it, then you're more likely to get a pristine cut. So we're going to take our cutter that we had earlier, put it down over your clay, find a nice place where it looks good, where it's nice and even the whole way around. Then when you're happy, because at this stage, if I was unhappy, I would pick the clay up and I'd manipulate it again to push it this way, pull it, until I'd got exactly right where I was cutting. Then lay your cling film over the top. Put your cutter on, and I'm just going to pull it towards me slightly so I can have a really good look to make sure it's exactly where I want it. When you have it exactly where you want it, I press down just gently with my fingers, so that if, like that, it pings off, having spent all that time looking to see where it is, I've already got that groove in there, so I know where to put it. So I can come back with my board, press down really firmly, and the excess should pull away. Lift that off, pull away any little excess bits on the bottom of it, and then find whatever mould you're planning to use. So I'm using this Sculpey moulding tray, and just gently press your piece into place. Again, take your time, make sure there's no air bubbles trapped underneath. When it's nicely centred, with your again with a knitting needle, if just have a little bit of a roll over, just make sure there's no gaps have opened up where any of those seams were, no fingerprints, no marks, because you want to spend as little time sanding or or giving a finishing preparation as you can. So there it is, that one's ready to go. So before we bake him, let's do the earrings. The earrings are very simple. Just take 2 more slices. There's no backing clay on these, so I'm going to make them quite thick, the slices. As even as possible, and again, pull them down so that you do actually have opposites, so that when you've got one ear to the other, so you can see here, there's quite a marked indent here from one side to another where those 2 canes didn't join completely. So I know that they're going to be on opposite ears, which is fine. Take your little cutter, check that it fits over. If, like on these, I'm just going to pick them up and put it on the measuring sheet. As you can see there, they're slightly more oblong than square. So with my roller, I'm just going to roll them very gently, more square, so that now when I put my cutter down, it fits neatly over the whole piece. And again, take your little bit of plastic wrap. Same thing again, spend a bit of time, a little bit of a guide, press down. And if you go wrong on the first one, that's fine, just mirror what you do on the second one. Because as long as the earrings are the same, no one's going to know whether or not it was exactly as it should have been. Lift them off. If, like that, you haven't quite gone down through with the cutter, just take your craft knife and run it round. As before, take away any little excess bits. And then on our mould, as before, just press down and press them onto the moulding shape. You'll find that these ones, because they are canes just by themselves with no backing sheet, they have a tendency to pull open, and that's fine, because as before we will just take our knitting needle and just gently run it over to neaten them off. And then I will simply get a piece of foil and wrap this all the way around the tray. And I've got enough height there that I'm not touching them inside. And then this brush protects them should my oven spike for any reason. Bake as per your manufacturer's instructions for the brand of clay you are using. And that's it, and we'll bring you back when those have been baked. Okay, so this is one I've actually done earlier, so it's all been baked and ready to go. I've also sanded it and given it a small just buff on a pair of trousers, old jeans. So I've sanded it, starting with the 240 paper, and all I did, I just put the paper in half, wore some rubber gloves, put a little bit of water in a washing up bowl with a little bit of detergent or washing up liquid, and then in circular motions just went round over the top of it and round the outside and the edges just to make it nice and smooth. And I did exactly the same with the earring pieces, and I worked through 240, 600, 1000, 1500 and up to 2000. So I haven't polished this as yet, but I've just got it to a stage that I find it easier to do it before I put things like the bail on, and the same with the earrings. I find these easier to do before I put the earring studs on. So that's what I've done with those up to this stage. I then need to decide what sort of finding I'm going to put in. Now I think for this one I am going to use one of these proper bails, but you could also use a little jump ring, one of these tiny little screws if you've got one of those. So there's another jump ring there, different type, different size. You could also make your own little jump ring, and this has been made from one of these head pins. And all I did was take a head pin, take one of the round nosed pliers, put it fairly central in there, and just wrap the wire around. Take the nose out and put it until it becomes a little cross at the bottom. And then you could either, if you wanted to, if you haven't got any pliers to cut, just curve these two pieces up. So that's something that's going to sit nicely in the clay. Or if you do a bigger one like this one, then you don't need to take off any edges, you've just got a bigger round there. So that's another way of making a round to do as a bail. But for this one, we're just going to use it as is. So I'm going to take a little bit of liquid clay, which is decanted into a pot here, and I'm just going to rub that. The first thing I'm going to do is decide which way up I want this to go. So I think for me the top's going to be here. So I've got a little bit of liquid clay inside there. And I'm going to take a little bit of scrap clay. So this is the scrap clay from the bits we've chopped off when I was making the earrings. And I'm just going to push a wad of that just to create a place where the bail is going to sit. The bail now sits on top. I'm going to push that down nicely. It's just nice and square, but I'm going to pull some of this excess clay over the top. Make sure that's embedded. Look at the front. Make sure the scrap clay is not showing. Because I've got a line down here, I'm making sure it's nice and even with that line. And there we go. We're going to neaten that off in just a second, but we're going to do exactly the same with the earrings. I'm going to take a little bit of liquid clay, and this I'm going to smear on the whole of the inside of the earring. First, I've just wiped my fingers. So the next thing you need to decide is, again, which way up you want them to go. I think I'm going to have them so that they're sort of like a diamond shape. So I'm going to put that one like that so they're even. Take a little bit of your offcuts. So let's take a little bit of this one. Just need a small amount. Roll it into a ball. Flatten the balls slightly and place them in the same place on each of your earrings. Then take the post with the flat bottoms and place it just inside and push it down with your nails. And as we did with the bail, just pull a little bit of that excess clay over the top just to sit it nicely in. We're just going to make sure it's set, again, nicely in line with that line on the piece, and then repeat for the other one. So again, press down in and pull the clay across. And now we're going to want some thinnish pieces of our cane. Now here are a couple of pieces of the ones I cut off earlier when I was neatening up the end slice of the cane. So I'm going to take those and I'm going to take another thin slice. And on all of them I'm going to use a cutter to cut a circle. It doesn't have to be particularly neat because it is on the back, and for the earrings in particular this is wider than these particular earrings are because I used a smaller cutter on that particular one, so don't have to be too neat. But we can then make it nice and pretty on the inside as well. So I'm just going to very neatly just pull that over. And there we go. Can't see any of that on the outside, but it's nice and neat on the inside. And with the earrings, get a pin, or just something to make a slight pinpoint. So I'm going to do it about here. And then slip that down over the end of the earring stud and press quite firmly, because we've already baked the clay, so that's fine. I'm going to do the same again, so just under to the pattern there, turn him round, put him through the hole, press nice and firmly down. Whilst he's ready to go, obviously these ones we need to neaten off slightly. So with your craft knife or your tissue blade, whichever you find easier, using the outer edge of that baked clay as a guide, just run your craft knife around to start with, and then you can actually flatten him off and run the knife smooth with the underneath. And now your post is neatly embedded in the back of your earring. Do the same for the other one. And there we go, just check they're nice and neat and smooth. Make sure you haven't got any mess on the front. I will also at this stage just make sure that those posts are nice and flat and aren't sticking up or down at an angle. Check that they're the same on each side. And then get your tray. And this time they'll sit on the inside. And again, just bake that as per the manufacturer's instructions. And again, I would tent these in foil as I did before. So that is basically it. All we'll do when these are finished baking, I will then just sand on the earrings. I will just sand. This shouldn't really need any sanding at all, but I'll sand the backs, because obviously that's the bit that's going to be close to your ears, so you want to make sure that that's nice and smooth, and then they're ready to go. So here's the finished piece. Just added the chain onto it and just giving it a light buff so it gives a nice gentle sheen. So that's the pendant. And here are the two earrings, their backs on, all finished off and sanded. So that gives you one sample of the colours you can do in this technique. Just to show you a few more, this is a nice colour combination. And this one was done with the royal violet, white and into a flamingo mix, and then we'd got the white with apple green and a little bit of peppermint, and the whole thing with a black surround. So that was the triangle it made for that, which gives you that effect. This one was peppermint into white into the apple green, and then with the white, the flamingo and then a little bit of the royal violet in the middle, and that gives you that effect. And this one was, rather than black, I used Windsor blue around the outside, so a dark blue. And then finally this one, which was apple green, white flamingo, and then white with a little bit of peppermint, and then again into the royal violet at the end. And this one again had black all the way around it. So there you go, a nice selection of pendants, lots of different colourways you can do them, and all with matching earrings. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. As I say, just a fun little cane which makes a nice kaleidoscope, and obviously you can use it in a bigger project than the one I have done, in which case just use more clay in your initial cane. So that was it for now. As always, thank you so much for watching, and for those of you who subscribed, thank you again for subscribing. Really do appreciate it for those of you who do, and I'll see you next time for the next video. Bye.